Hello, I'm Joe. I'm the Teufelberger Ambassador for Sweden. We're going to look at the multiSAVER. So this particular version of the multiSAVER, it's got a serious loop with the larger ring. The previous models have had a smaller ring, so there's a few different ways you can configure this. Got two big rings and one small ring. So I'm going to show you some tricks for not getting it stuck and also not dropping any hardware. And also a retrievable SRT redirect. So I've got a line installed in this tree here, and to be honest, I've got a good visual on that fork there, and I'd actually be quite happy working off that. But as a matter of principle, it's always good to install your access line and then climb up and actually have a close visual inspection of that fork before you start working. You know, there can be hidden defects and that kind of thing up there, and during access the fork is most likely to only be loaded in compression in this direction. When you start working, then we start going into side loading and that kind of thing, so it's good practice to go up and have a look and see if the anchor is actually suitable for the work you'd like to carry out. I'm just making a simple base anchor here. It's a bowline with some wraps to keep it in position and a butterfly in case for rescue. It gives some different options. So again, it's good practice really just to say no working from the access line. But you can just use this as an opportunity to inspect the tree and especially if I've got a base anchor here. I don't want to risk cutting next to this anchoring leg. And just have a good look around the tree. So now I can have a look at installing my working line and also how we can use the multiSAVER to work with tight forks and also to retrieve the saver without actually dropping any hardware. So I've got my access line, that's going to stay in place for rescue. And then we've got the multiSAVER. As I mentioned, we've got two large rings, and one of those rings is within the ring loop, and then the small ring on the end. So we've got a few options with this. But just as a matter of good practice, always like to, you put it in the fork, just give it 3 or 4 flicks. You can say, is that going to get stuck? Let's have a look. I mean, that could potentially get stuck, to be honest. So I've got a trick. So we take a bite, the 2 rings, two large rings hanging together. The bite goes through the fork, and then we put the ring loop into the bite. And just paying attention to the stitching, that it's facing away from the bite, it's not going to get stuck on retrieval. And then got my system here. And in this case, I'm just going to go through the two large rings. You can use all three if you want. So there's my climbing system installed. And just give that a test before I unclip from my ascent system. And what we can now do, which is a pretty cool feature, is you can actually use your access line to retrieve the saver. So just remove my ascending device. Okay, so I need that later. I'm just going to take an alpine butterfly and flip that in. And what I'm actually going to do here as well is just use a load bearing carabiner and clip that into the butterfly. So there's a whole lot of different ways you could configure this, but one quite nice feature is that you can implement some form of a backup if there's any concern about one of your anchors failing, that it's backed up to the access line. At least there's some form of redundancy there, which would obviously need to be risk assessed properly. So here all I've got to do is just pull out my working line, come straight through the cambium saver, and then once I've freed my base anchor, and it's just a simple matter of pulling the access line, and here comes the friction saver in the butterfly. So I haven't dropped any hardware, and I haven't had to pull any hardware through the fork. Okay, so I've got this retrievable SRT redirect to show you. It's what I'd call a close approach redirect. So it's something I'd use when I'm going to be working relatively close to the redirect. So it's just to improve work positioning. So say within 10 meters or so of the redirect. The reason being that it can use up quite a lot of rope over a longer distance, but you'll see that you get a nice mechanical advantage, so it's good for getting back from redirects, that kind of thing. So I use the same principle to avoid pulling hardware through the fork. So take the bite around the fork, and then the ring loop goes in. I can actually shorten that off a little bit. And then what I'm going to actually do is remove my SRT device, because I'm going to need to manage the friction in a slightly different way here. And then I take a bite, goes through both big rings, and then got a carabiner with a pulley, and I've got a tripled system there. So like I said, it's retrievable. So here I've just got a small clip, and that goes onto the rope above the redirect. So I'll just manage the slack there, give it a load test. So you'll see that I get a doubled over system there. So this is great for getting back from limb walks and that kind of thing. So just be aware of how much rope you're using up within that section. You can go here and work. And then when I want to return from the limb walk, I've got this nice mechanical advantage, which is just can help to pull yourself back in from a limb walk. And now, since I'd like to really avoid climbing back up to get that, I'll just lanyard in. So firstly, I'm going to unclip the bite. Carabiner goes away. And then it's just a matter of pulling through the slack. And then just give that pull down. There we go.